Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sanderlanche podcast. This week, we've got something really special for you guys. I'm going to preface everything that follows. Pay attention, everybody, with this spoiler warning. I'm going to be talking about Wind and Truth, Book 5 of the Stormlight Archive. And so this entire episode is spoilers open for everything. I'm talking everything Brandon has written. All the Cosmere stuff might come into play. Heck, we might reference Skyward or The Rhythmatist or something. I might talk about how Bruce Willis is dead in The Sixth Sense. Any spoilers, anything. So if you're not comfortable with that, if you haven't read up on everything, then maybe skip this one until you're there, until you've seen every movie that I might spoil, because Kevin Spacey is Kaiser Soze and so on and so forth. So that out of the way. Joe got sick this week. Jamie had a family emergency and had to handle that, leaving Dak to care for two babies. So I was the only one left who could record. And I thought, why don't we do a reaction to Wind and Truth? Now that I finished reading it, if you want to hear my step-by-step, chapter-by-chapter thoughts, you can sign up for the Patreon, and it's all there. But I thought, let's do a more general one for everybody. Just give kind of my overall feel. And so that it's not horribly boring and you're listening to just me talk, we have a special guest today. Say hi, Poet.
Hi, Poet. Oh, wait, I'm Poet. Hello, everybody.
That is friend of the show. You guys may remember him from our holiday special, Jedi Poet. So he's going to be here to keep me grounded, make sure I don't drift off too far into the theoretical Cosmere musings, because we all know that I can do that. So this is going to be an interesting one, y'all. Hang on to something. The Sanderlanche is about to begin.
I'm going higher tonight, yeah. I'm gonna set this city alight. I'm going higher tonight, yeah. I can see the world from my satellite. I'm going higher tonight, yeah. I'm gonna set this city alight. I'm going higher.
So yes, I don't actually know what song I'm going to put in that you just listened to. Maybe I think for previous special episode I've used Commander Shepard by Miracle of Sound, so maybe we'll do that again. You guys know by this time I don't. So I hope you enjoyed that. Music by Miracle of Sound, whatever it was. But
I loved it. It was great.
You know the Commander Shepard song, right? That was really big once upon a time.
Yeah, well, I'm a FemShep player, so.
Oh, well. Who do you like to romance as FemShep?
Usually, Liara. Yeah, she's usually my go-to.
Okay. I was thinking maybe you're gonna go for a Garrus or something.
No, you know what? This is funny. I am a straight male or gay female role-playing character. I never romance guys.
Okay. Fair. I mean, you guys now know more than you ever wanted to about Poet, I'm sure.
It's true. You guys probably never wanted to know that about me, but now you do.
But speaking of Poet, tell the audience how much experience you have with Brandon Sanderson books at this point.
The holiday special of this podcast. I am familiar with that much of his work. So I'm very curious to hear how the breakdancers are doing. Will Vin Diesel and Marilyn Manson make an appearance? I'll find out. Trying to think. Will John the Baptist show up? I don't know. These are all references to the holiday special.
I'm going to have to put that link in the description for this one in case any of you missed the holiday special. When we first started dating, my wife, I got her to read the first Mistborn trilogy. And then recently, after I took her to the convention in Salt Lake City, she's like, you know what? I need to go and reread that and read some more of his books after all this. And so she finished reading those 3 books. I was like, oh, you should listen to this this holiday special. I think you'll find it you'll find it amusing. And then she started listening. She's like, wait, why am I listening to you? And I was like, no. She's like, you find yourself amusing? I was like, no, I'm not really amusing on there, but the others, they're fun. Check it out.
That's awesome. I actually told a nurse I work with today about the holiday special, and told her that she should listen to it. And she was like, I'll do that next week on our road trip. So you may have some new Sanderlanche fans inbound shortly.
There you go. Are you going on a road trip, or is it just she's taking a road trip?
No, she and her fiance are taking a road trip without me.
Or, if they're listening to you, then you'll be coming along in spirit.
I mean, technically, I will be there in spirit.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sure that he'll appreciate that.
Right?
Okay. This book, we're going to talk about Wind and Truth. Wind and Truth is book 5 of the Stormlight Archive, Brandon's fantasy epic. I'm tempted to say like his Game of Thrones, except that it's a lot less sex and gore than Game of Thrones. So,
real quick, what was the first series that the holiday special for? Was that Mistborn?
So that was about the first book in the Mistborn series, which is called The Final Empire. Okay,
so that's Mistborn, and Mistborn and Stormlight are completely separate. No kind of crossover, no Dark Tower sort of scenario.
It's funny that you should mention that, because there is actually some crossover.
Interesting. Okay.
They take place in the same universe, the same like galaxy, and they're on different planets. But
oh shit! A new breakdancing crew has entered the game.
There's in fact, the ending of book 4 included some mind-blowing crossover where you found out that like this character that we'd been hearing about since the first book actually turned out to be one of the characters from Mistborn. And it was I don't remember what you named him. It was like the main guy character, the breakdancer. I don't remember the name that you guys gave him.
I don't remember what we gave him either. I'd have to see his photo again.
Okay, hold on. Now you gotta send me a photo. Yeah, I gotta show you the photo of this guy. Let's see if I can find one that looks. I just saw, because I was watching my wife watch this. I just saw the image of him that I used, but I don't know that I can instantly find it again. So we'll just go for anything. He's in Fortnite now. Here's the picture of him from Fortnite. So.
Shut up! He's in Fortnite.
Yeah, it's not necessarily because he was. The book series is big. Brandon's books are famous. I'm gonna put it in the Skype chat here. His books are famous and stuff, but it was that like Brandon knew the guy who owned or was in charge of that company, and they were like, "Hey, why don't we throw one of your characters in there?"
Oh, interesting. Well, that's cool. I do not remember what we named this guy.
Yeah. Anyway,
breakdancer number 1.
But yes, it turned out that despite the fact that he died in that book, it turned out that he was secretly this character on this other planet many years later.
Wow.
So, yeah. Mysterious and shit. But anyway, so this is book 5, and it wraps up what is the first arc of the Stormlight Archive. So just to set the groundwork for everybody, Brandon has said that it's going to be a 10-book series published in 2 arcs, the first 5 books, the second 5 books.
Interesting.
And so there's been some mixed reception on how well it wraps things up, because some people expected everything to get wrapped up, and other people are like, well, it's only the first half of the series. Why would everything get wrapped up? And so that's been a point of contention, and I will touch on that as we get there in my thoughts.
I mean, before we get there, I'll just say I'm 100% on the side of we're halfway through the series. Not everything should be wrapped up. But
he's also going to take like a 10-year break or something before writing more of these books.
Is he waiting for the characters to age up?
Well, no, he's going to move over and write like the next Mistborn trilogy.
Okay, that makes more sense.
And some other stuff in the interim.
Okay.
Because like his whole plan is like eventually it all kind of collides. He says not in like an Avengers way necessarily. It's not like characters that are all going to meet up in the end, but like cultures, all of these cultures on these different planets that you've gotten familiar with are going to kind of collide. And so we're building towards that. So he can't go, he has to build a little here and then move over here and build a little more. So we build into the future that way.
That makes sense.
But this book features a break from his previous style in that we usually would get like 5 parts. This is divided into 10 parts because there are 10 days. We learned at the end of the last book that a battle for the fate of the planet is going to happen in 10 days. And so this book builds up to that.
Oh. So the book is the book all 10 days?
Yes, the book basically covers all 10 days. And then there's a little wrap up at the end that goes past that. But for the most part, it's 10 days. It's 10 days and like, how many pages is this? It's a ridiculous number of pages. I had to bring 2 of them back from the convention. And because my wife got one also, a signed copy. And it's 1,344 pages each of these books. So
wow,
yeah,
that's a lot of pages.
Books.
Yeah. Interestingly, I just saw a YouTube short of him talking about how much more expensive longer books are than shorter books, but generally speaking, they don't change the price of them.
Yep.
So, and I had never really thought about that, but like he says, like, you know, like it like basically a normal paperback should be about $8, and one of his paperbacks should probably be $25 in the cost of just producing it, everything related to producing that book. And like, and then he talked about how, what would you want to sell on a book at a bookstore? A book that takes up 3 books on the bookshelf, or 3 books that you could sell.
Right, that you're getting the same price for each of those 3.
That you're getting in all 4. Yeah, all 3 are the same price, and one as the one book that's taking up 3 slots. Yeah, it was interesting. It was something I hadn't considered before. That, like,
yeah. One of the reasons that in Europe each of the Stormlight books was divided into like 2 in Europe and Australia and stuff, and they sold them as 2 books.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
So, except for this one I think they're like, okay, we're gonna just go ahead and do it as 1 book. And Dak is annoyed because because we're reading the books on the show. I bought him all the books, and Jamie, and so they sit on his shelf. They're very, very well matched, 2 books for each. And then I bought him the newest one, and it's way taller and only 1 book. And he's like, my shelf. Why?
That's hilarious.
I need to put that up in our Instagram so everyone can see. If I didn't do that already, I don't recall. But this book is called Wind and Truth because it's following 2 characters who get dubbed by other parties by the end of the book, the Knights of Wind and Truth. In fact, the title was originally, or one of the titles he was playing with was Knights of Wind and Truth, but he decided that was kind of too something of something, was kind of like too generic fantasy book, so he shortened it.
Gotcha.
But we have Kaladin and Seth, who are Knights of Wind and Truth, and they're one of the stories that we're following.
I feel like Kaladin's a name I've heard before.
It could be. He is. Some would call him the main character of the Stormlight Archive.
But is he not? And he wasn't in Mistborn then?
No, he was not.
Okay.
Kelsier may be the character that you're thinking about that was in Mistborn. Although I don't remember if I told you guys their real names, but Kelsier was the guy whose picture I showed you in Mistborn. So
I can't remember if you did tell us their real names or not. All right, but go on.
It was much funnier when you didn't know their real names.
Yeah,
so.
For sure.
But Kaladin, to bring you up to date on Kaladin, he starts out the story as a young the first 5 books of the Stormlight Archive. He starts out as a young guy, a boy who's training to be a surgeon with his dad because his dad's a surgeon, and secretly like dreaming about going off and joining the army because of peer pressure, because obviously that's much cooler than being a surgeon.
I remember Luke wanted to rush off and join the Empire.
No, didn't he want to fight against the Empire?
No, he wanted to join the Empire, and then it was only later that he realized the Empire was terrible. Because remember, Biggs left to go join the Empire.
No, but
And
Biggs was in the rebellion.
Yeah, because he joined the Empire. He was like, yo, this is the worst. I'm out.
I think I just always assumed because he was going to follow Biggs and Biggs was in the rebellion that's what we were talking about.
No, he was going to follow Biggs into the Imperial Navy, and then his uncle's like, nah, dog, we got blue milk and shit we got to take care of. And then Obi-Wan swooped him up, and then his uncle and auntie were barbecued, and then he met Biggs again, had joined the rebellion.
Oh, yeah, okay. I had to bring up Wikipedia or whatever. It's like Biggs Darklighter left his homeworld for the Imperial Academy and then defected after graduation. I think he finished his school in first, so
Yeah.
you got that going for you.
Well, yeah, you know. He wanted to see what job prospects are out there after graduation. He's like, this market is the worst.
This is it can't have this. Okay, so yeah, Kaladin eventually does join the army, except in kind of like a Hunger Games sort of scenario, like I volunteers tribute kind of thing.
May the odds ever be in your favor.
He then becomes a slave and gets like the worst slave job you can imagine, and then
Jizz mop cleaner?
no, a lot worse than that.
Oh,
Like,
yikes.
Yeah. It's it involves like people shooting arrows at him a lot, so not fun. And then becomes a bodyguard for the most powerful man in the world, and then becomes a magical flying knight. And then by the end of this book, I'm sorry. And after that, becomes a therapist in the majority of this book. And by the end, he gets elevated to demigod. So this is a guy who we have followed for a long time on a series of adventures.
This sounds like the craziest DLC packages ever for a video game. We're like, hold on, the new season, I'm a therapist?
I did not see that coming. All right,
No.
then.
But that's interesting that it would cover such a wide, because usually, it's something like farm boy to hero, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
That's interesting.
So Kaladin, but like I said, he spends most of this book. He's gotten tired of fighting, and he's got like clinical depression basically. So he's spending this book trying to help other people like sort through their emotional shit and do less like actual fighting. And that's another point of contention that some people are having with the book. That Kaladin's not like active or as active as they want to see him, but B, there's a lot of stuff that feels like almost too modern. Like on this planet, he's inventing therapy as he goes along. And then like somebody who's not from this planet actually calls it therapy. And I've heard so many people get mad about that. Like, don't call him a therapist. That makes it just sound way too modern.
Yeah.
And I get that, but as someone who has like 2 degrees in psychology, I actually really liked watching him kind of develop from scratch some actual like therapy techniques.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that in this book, where like the exact thing that some people kind of hate. And so I will say that for Kaladin's story here, as much as it does, there is a lot of like modernisms creeping in. I kind of like the direction they take it.
Hold on for 1 second.
No, yeah, you're fine.
I'm trying to look up this term. Is it a Bader Meinhof thing?
Uh-oh.
Where you think something's new, but it's old? It's really old?
The Bader, a cognitive bias that causes people to believe something they've recently learned about is more common than it actually is. Oh, I didn't remember that was the term for that. Although, yeah, I totally know what that's.
There's like a name. I can't remember what name it is, but it's something like Bambi or Barbie. Some name that if you put it in like a Renaissance book, you'd be like, what the fuck? That name is from this year. But it was really a popular name back then. But because it's viewed as such a modern name, people immediately are taken out of it because they don't realize it's actually a much older name but I can't remember what name it is.
I bet that happens with different stuff, because it's like like names kind of go in cycles like that, I think.
Yeah.
Justin, somebody points out here, is the name of like 2 Byzantine emperors.
All right. That's exactly what they're talking about, because that sounds insane.
The Tiffany paradox is an issue where historical or realistic fact seems anachronistic. So there you go. So is it the name Tiffany? Is that really old? Is that what this is?
Yeah, it's Tiffany is the word.
The following names have been mistakenly thought to be of modern origin, but actually historical: Shane, Beverly, Wade, and Nicola.
Interesting. So I guess I could see how, because it's like this book is like knights and like fantasy is not what the word, like Middle Ages or whatever the term you want to be, like knights and kings and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I could see how therapy would be, but what else would you call it though? Because it sounds like this guy has PTSD.
He definitely has some PTSD. That's absolutely accurate.
But what would you call, old knights with PTSD?
Yeah, and they address some of that in here, because it's like, or in previous books, because it's like there's people who have mental issues basically because like I said, originally he's trained to be a surgeon, so he knows how to deal with lots of stuff. But his dad's just like, oh, well, when we see somebody with like these mental problems, we send them to the Ardents, who are like the priests basically. And the priests have just one thing that they follow. They're like, put them in a dark room. And that's more or less their catch-all solution for anybody with mental issues, which obviously is not super helpful.
Yeah, it's definitely not super helpful.
And so in the last book, he discovers that's like what helps him when he's feeling depressed. Maybe that'll help these other people when they're feeling like similar ways. And so he like starts bringing some of them out, starts like talking. He gets them in a room and just like helps several people kind of talk about how they're feeling, and it makes them feel better. And he's like, oh, holy shit, we need to totally rework how we're dealing with this kind of thing. And so as we get into this book, he's the only person who knows anything or really has a vested interest in doing this. And so when they're like, hey, we've got this guy, Seth, he has this really important mission he needs to go on, but he's also he's fucking crazy. Like cuckoo banana nuts. So we want you to go and help him while he's do his mission. Okay. And he's like, oh, all right.
And who is Seth? He's another knight, but what's his story?
So Seth starts and that's each of the Stormlight Archive books has flashbacks of one of the main characters. Like the very first book, Way of Kings, was Kaladin's flashbacks, where you learned about his childhood while crazy shit was happening in the present day. This is the book where we finally learn about like Seth and where he came from and what he's doing. Up till now, all we knew was, well, we find out a few things, but like the first book starts out with Seth. He's like in the prologue. He's the viewpoint character of the prologue, as he showed like let me read the first line, because people love the first line of this book. And I typed the Way of Kinds instead of Kings. There it is. Way of Kings. It says, Seth, son Villano, truthless of Shinovar, wore white on the day he was to kill a king. So that is how the prologue starts to that book.
Oh, yeah, it's a good start to a book.
And so that book starts out with Seth killing the king of Alethkar, of this country where a lot of our main characters in the book are from. And Seth has a magical sword that gives him magical powers, and uses them like to be like, pretty much the best fighter ever. He can kill people, including he takes out the king here. And but the thing is, he doesn't want to do any of that. He has to follow the instructions of a rock, or rather whoever is holding the rock. So he has a rock, and whoever has the rock gets to tell him what to do, and he has to do it.
Wait, Dwayne Johnson's in this book?
That would be a more interesting story, but yeah, no, it's a much. There's actually a character in the books called Rock. It's not him either. It's just a rock.
So So hold on. So if I'm holding the rock, I can tell him whatever to do, whatever I want him to do,
Yep.
and he'll do it. But if he's holding the rock, it's talking to him.
No, if he holds the rock, basically he just has to like stand there until someone comes along and is like, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" And then he goes, "This is my rock. If you take it, I have to do whatever you say." He does eventually start to hear voices, but they are the voices of all of the people that he has killed, all of the innocents that he has slaughtered. From his perspective, like wanting revenge on him. So that's part of his insanity in later books.
I mean, that just sounds like the white noise that would put me to sleep at night.
You're like, I got that already. Doesn't everybody?
Like, this is perfect. Drowned out these thoughts I'm having. Thank you. Interesting. That is a weird. But so he's been using this rock the other three. Do they explain where that comes from in this book?
Yes, we finally find out like where that came from, why he is, and like it said, he in that sentence I read, he's truthless of Shinovar, and so like truthless is a title, and in this book we find out that it became a title because the people of Shinovar have the truth that they follow and have been preparing for, that like this ancient enemy that everyone thought was defeated is going to come back, and they're the only ones that are preparing. So that and they're supposed to be preparing for this return. This ancient enemy's been gone for 4,500 years, but we find out in this book that the people of Shinovar are supposed to be ready to fight because they're the only ones who know they're coming back. And so Seth, as a young man, becomes a warrior. Their society is real different from how you might imagine. Like farmers are the top of like the social scale, kind of, and some of the most influential people are the farmers, whereas soldiers are practically like property people and are looked down upon as those who subtract. Like the farmer grows food, he adds stuff to the world, so we like him. The soldiers take stuff away, and so we don't like them.
Gotcha.
So as a child, his family like are shepherds working for the farmer, and then one day this guy tries to kill him, and he picks up a rock and bashes the dude's skull in, and then he has to become a soldier because he has subtracted. And so that is all stuff that comes out of this book, and his past rather in that first book is very sad. Like lots of really bad shit happens to him when he's just trying to do what's best, when he's just trying to like help people.
Mm-hmm.
Seth has a very sad story also, but it's almost always predicated on him making a bad decision. And I was just like, dude, you need to fucking like he'll be on the verge of getting everything he wants. They're like, hey, we're going to send you off to this lonely outpost, and you'll be in charge there, but there's nothing really happens there. You can maybe even like go back to herding some sheep and stuff just to pass time. He's like, you mean I don't have to kill anyone or fight? This is amazing. I would love to do this. And then he just can't help himself but like say something that totally derails everything. And I'm just like, dude, just shut up. Learn when to shut up. My God, my man. And
interesting.
So yeah, it's sad, but in a very different way, where I'm just like, dude, you keep doing this shit to yourself. Why? And so as a he becomes this soldier, and he sees something as he's moving up in the ranks. He becomes, so at the top level of their society, even above the farmers, are the honor bearers, who are like these, like, I think it's 7 or 8 guys, or could be women, men or women, who get to wield these magical swords that give them superpowers. And so he ascends to become one of these people because he's just such an amazing fighter. He's so good at everything. And then he sees something after this ascension that makes him think that the ancient enemy has returned. And so he goes and starts telling people, hey, this thing happened. And they're like, no, it didn't. That's not right. The enemy's not back. Shut up. and he ends up having to like lead an insurrection against the other honor bearers because he's so sure that he's right, that the enemy has returned and so on and so forth. And then when he loses, they call him a violator of the truth, this truth that they all follow, which is why he's truthless.
Okay. I was waiting to ask, what does the truthless part mean? Okay, makes sense.
So yeah, so they're and as part of being truthless, when you've done the worst thing imaginable, violated the truth, since you can't be trusted to make decisions on your own, you're bound, not like magically or anything, just like you're told, hey, you are now one of these guys. You have to trust other people to make the decisions for you. Whoever holds the rock gets to boss you around.
Okay. All right. I just thought he was a crazy person who was giving people the rock to give him power, but this makes a little bit more sense now.
But on some level, it kind of is crazy because and after a couple of books, he finds out that he was right all along. The ancient enemy has returned.
I was just going to ask, so did he see the ancient enemy? He did. Or he saw whatever he needed to see.
What he thought was that, it turns out it was something else. So he was actually wrong about that specific thing, but he was right that this stuff was coming back. So eventually he realizes that he was never truthless in reality. Like, he was right that the ancient enemy was returning. And so the decision.
All right, let me just make an argument.
Okay.
If I say it's raining and it's not raining, but eventually it rains, that doesn't mean I was right that it was raining.
Okay, you're not wrong. Yeah. Okay, so arguably, yeah. No, I hadn't thought about it quite that way, but I think you're right that there's definitely an argument to be made there. But it's not even until this book that he finds out that what that really was. He's still determined that he was originally right until we get pretty far in this book, and he's like, "Oh, that was a different thing."
But I was still right. They are back.
I mean, but by this time, by book 5, they've been back for like several books now, and like the whole world is fighting against them. Everybody is now fighting against they're called the Voidbringers.
Okay. The way you were talking about him, I thought it might be Voldemort, like he who cannot be named.
It's hard to name them exactly because they call them the Voidbringers, but in reality, we find out that in the past, the humans were the Voidbringers, and these guys lived here on this planet first, and then the humans like took it over, and then turned the name around and called these other guys the Voidbringers, and that started this whole thing. But anyway,
that sounds like a very human trait.
I know, right? Yeah, you're like you hear that and you're not at all surprised. Yeah.
We came, we saw, we renamed it.
So the Voidbringers are like just publicly come back at the end of like book 2 or something, and he has this realization that like the rock was only ever a rock. It was his determination to follow this rule that made him kill all these people. Like, he didn't have to actually listen to those guys. It was just that he'd sworn to follow the orders of whoever had the rock. And so while evil people made him kill lots of innocent people, he shares the blame for that.
I mean, yeah.
Whereas before that, it was just like, well, I mean, I have to do whatever whoever has the rock says. So, although even then, he's like, I'm not absolved for like the evil things that I've done. That's a misconception. It's all still on me. I just don't have any choice about it. But anyway, so yeah, Seth has been through some shit. Like, a guy got a hold of his magic rock and used him to like assassinate lots of different kings and stuff to throw the world into turmoil. And so he slaughtered lots of innocent people, and it was he didn't want to do any of that. But in this book, he's going back to Shinovar, to the place where he's from, to bring justice to the people who like unjustly made him truthless and cast him out or whatever. And so that's the mission that he's on, that Kaladin is going with him to help with therapy.
Gotcha. Now, at this point, is he no longer beholden to the rock?
So no, he is not. At the end of the second book,
so he shook that off.
Yeah, he's like, oh, it turns out I was right all along, so I don't have to listen to that rock. But So in this series, there are 10 different orders of knights, magical knights. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And each order gets superpowers based on the spren that they bond with.
Okay.
So,
and sprens are?
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm sure that's got to be the next question. So on this world, there are lots of spren, which are basically like they're like energy projections of things. So for instance, if a guy gets angry, like really angry, then anger spren might appear around him briefly before like vanishing. It's like, hey, I'm angry, and little things pop up. So there's emotion spren that pop up, like there's gloom spren and there's joy spren, just whatever emotions there could be spren.
Okay.
But there's also spren of like the natural world. So there's flame spren, and if there's a fire, you might see little flame spren that look like little bits of fire dancing around in there. Or there's rain spren. So if it's raining, you might see rain spren, which they're fucking creepy as far as I'm concerned. It's like it looks like a blue candle with an eyeball on the top.
All right, that's creepy.
Yeah. And so I'm just like, I wouldn't want those around. So spren can look all sorts of weird ways. Like anger spren look like pools of blood that just kind of appear like out of the ground around them, and stuff like that. So it's weird because it seems very odd to us, but to everybody on this world, that's just like how nature works. These things are everywhere. So, but some spren are like more intelligent than others and are like sentient. And some of these sentient spren can bond with people to create these magical knights.
Daxes?
No. Sorry, I think you meant Dak at first. I was like, what does Dak have to do with it?
No. Jadzia Dak.
Jadzia Dax. Or Ezri Dax.
Yeah, or Ezra from Deep Space Nine.
But no, not exactly. They become like knights with magical powers. They get magical swords. They get magical armor. It's and
that just like all materializes on them, or
so they have to go through a process where it's like there's 10 orders, like I said. Each order has 2 powers.
Okay.
That go with that order. And you advance and get more powers and things mostly by speaking oaths. And each order has a different set of oaths that they speak, a different kind of focus. For instance, Kaladin is what they call a windrunner. That is his order. And so he bonds with an honor spren, which is a personification of honor. In his case, she looks like a little blue woman, and I'll put her picture in here so you can see what I'm talking about. But that's Syl, or Sylfrina is her name, and she floats around him and makes jokes and messes with him. It's fun.
Okay.
But and so he has his powers are adhesion. He can make stuff stick to other stuff, and gravitation, where he can make gravity move in different ways. Basically, he can like make his own like he can fly by making gravity turn around and pull him up instead of down, or he can move to the side, make something move to the side by changing gravity for that thing so it moves that way.
I did that with Baraxis and Suddenly Heroes.
There's a reference nobody in the universe gets at this point.
0 people on your 0 listeners will understand what I'm talking about.
But yes, so and for the Windrunners, their oaths are all about protecting people.
Okay.
And so like he spoke an oath like, I will protect those who cannot protect themselves. That was technically all the Radiance orders start with the same first oath, which is journey before destination, life before death, strength before weakness. After that, they split off into different. And so his second one was, I will protect those who can't protect themselves. His third one was, I will protect even those I hate as long as it's right. And that's when he gets his magic sword. And it turns out that the spren turns into this magical weapon, and the weapon can actually change and become like he usually likes to use a spear, so he turns her into a spear a lot. But
Gotcha.
the magic swords that can cut through anything, and they're pretty cool.
Nice.
And so then he says his fourth one, which is like he has to, I forget the exact wording, but he has to recognize that he can't protect everybody.
Okay. Makes sense.
And that's when he gets his armor. And his armor, as it turns out, is composed of like a bunch of wind spren, which are just like little ribbons that float around with the wind. But a bunch of them get together and turn into armor for him when he says his fourth oath. And so that's like how the progression there works.
Gotcha.
And so, sorry, the two of them go on this mission, and it's obviously it always turns out to be a lot more complicated. It's funny to me because, like I said, there's like 8 different guys with magical swords, different, and these are like the bond that I talked about. They give you those same powers as bonding a friend, but you don't have to bond them. The sword just gives those powers to you.
Gotcha.
So there's only 10 of these swords in existence. And they match up with each of the 10 orders of the knights, and so you get the powers without the restriction of having to do the oaths and the spread and stuff. And so,
generally speaking, are the knights considered good, or are there knights that are bad knights, or is it more like someone could be a knight and then turn bad?
So
kind of those.
Kind of all of the above.
Okay.
In a way, like at one point in the distant past, it was like they're all good. And then, like, all of the knights abandoned their oaths, more or less. And then after that, people hated them, and history changed to be like, oh, they were always evil or whatever. And then they started coming back when the Voidbringers were about to return as like a way to work against the bad guys. So, but you can turn, you can break your oath, you can. One of the guys who was one of Kaladin's best friends, when he was a slave, becomes one of the lead bad guys in the series, and so and everybody hates him, and it's great. His name is Moash, and there's a whole subreddit called Fuck Moash. People love hating this guy. But which actually tangent, that's going to bring me to another thing that I wanted to bring up about this book. Moash, so you may remember from that first book, like the guy with spikes in his head and that go through his eyes.
Yeah.
We called him Spike.
Yeah. I mean, it was a fitting name.
In the last book, Moash goes blind because he fucks with the wrong person. And she messes him up. In this book, they do something similar to what was done to that guy in Mistborn. I assume that they're accessing like the same sort of magic that's used on this other planet. And they instead of metal spikes, they use crystals. And so they drive crystals through his eyes out the back of his skull. And it's pretty fucked up.
Yikes.
But that being said, like, given how much he's been built up, him and most of the like most interesting bad guys don't get a lot of time in this book. And that's one of the biggest surprises for me when I'm talking about this book as a whole. Is like, we see a little bit of Moash. He even kills somebody that we like, but he's really just like mostly off page. The same with Elle, who was introduced at the very, like in the epilogue of the last book, is like this new, really intimidating guy. Like, he shows up a little bit, but not much at all. And so it feels like, so the bad guys are working for this evil god called Odium. And it feels very much like Odium mainly shows up in this book in the interludes. So between every day, I said it's divided into 10 days.
Yep.
At the end of day 1, before the beginning of day 2, we get 2 interludes. One will be with some random character that is doing something interesting. The second of, I think, every single interlude is with Odium. So we see what Odium's up to, this evil god. And at one point, it really feels like he's putting together like his evil A-team, like the Sinister Six sort of thing.
Yeah.
He's recruiting all of these people. He recruits Moash. He recruits this Elle guy. He recruits this lady who used to be, or I guess technically is, a herald, who were like, they were the 10 people who held on to those 10 magic swords. Initially, they were given these swords by the good, quote, good god Honor. and to help stop Odium, and they were like these are like the legendary hero demigods of old that some people still worship them to this day. And so he recruits one of those, even like he's building this serious team of bad guys, and then we just don't see anything happen with that. So I was like, I guess we're setting up for like the second 5 books or something. But it's one of the things about this book that really stuck out to me was like, I don't need everything to be resolved, but it seemed odd that like these characters that we've really built up just don't get much screen time and are pushed off to the side in this book as we're doing other things.
Got you.
So one of the things that I would point out, I don't have this is a very divisive book among the fandom. I've at least on Reddit and places so far. You got a lot of people who are very upset about some of it and a lot of people who really love it. And I'm definitely not in the hating group. It's not my favorite of these 5 books. It's probably like number 3 or something for me. But some people are very upset about this stuff.
Interesting. It'll be curious to see when if the series finishes, their opinions have changed.
Right. Yeah. Like, how does it feel after as the midpoint instead of right now? This is the end of what we're going to get for a long time. So I'm sure that it does feel different. That's a good point.
Yeah. Cause like for instance, I don't really like Dune 2 because to me, it feels like, have you seen the movie? Spoiler alert for those who maybe have not seen Dune 2, but it felt like Paul and Johnny were communicating the whole movie, and he was like, look, I can't do this, and these are the reasons why I can't do this. And then when he finally changed and made his decision, it didn't feel like he communicated that to her. And so like right now, I don't really like Dune 2 is my least favorite of the Dunes, but I'll be curious when Dune 3 comes out if they show you that they did communicate and it was just in a way that maybe I didn't catch on or they didn't want to reveal, and maybe then I'll have a different opinion of it. But
sure.
Yeah. So that's what that made me think of. I wonder if their opinions will change when the entire Stormlight series is out.
That's interesting. I actually have not seen either of the Dunes because
interesting.
I kept hearing after the first one came out that it was like it's clearly just like half a movie. I was like, well, I'll wait till the second one comes out and I'll watch them both. And then I haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah, no, they're definitely beautiful movies. And watching the trailers for the first Dune, I was like, I'm going to go see it, but I don't particularly, nothing really like blew my wig back.
Yeah.
But watching the movie, I really enjoyed the movie, and I was looking forward to Dune 2, and all of the trailers for Dune 2 had me pumped. And then when I watched the movie, I was like, oh, I don't like this one as much as I like the first one, and I'm really not happy with how it. And like there are parts of it I really like 2 scenes in particular I really like in the end, but this one point of this communication between the 2 main characters, I was like, ooh, I don't like how that played, because it felt disingenuous to how it was the whole movie. And when you watch them, maybe I'll have you on. You watch them, and I'll have you on the Poet and Billy podcast, and we'll talk Dune.
Okay, I like that.
Cool.
I'll do it. Although you got me thinking that I need Dune 3 is going to need to knock me out then if. Okay. Anyway.
All right. Yeah. We've digressed. So these 2, they're on a mission and they're wishing upon a star. Snoop Doggy Dogg has the caviar.
So yes, another thing that I felt very strongly was, so like I said, you've got all these guys in Shinovar have these 8 magical swords. There's 10, but I think they have 7 of them at this point.
Okay.
They've only got 7 of them.
Kaladin has 1.
No, Seth did have 1. It got taken from him, and now actually Moesh has it in this book, but it's been corrupted, so it almost doesn't even count anymore.
Gotcha.
But so this whole storyline feels very much like a video game to me, because what they end up doing is like there's these 8 temples that they have to visit, and at each one of them is one of the guys with a sword, and then they have to beat that guy and get that sword.
That definitely sounds like a video game. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
I feel like I did that on Zelda.
exactly, right? Yeah. You got to go to the water temple and
Yeah, 100%.
they mix it up some and keep it interesting. Like there's one where he's almost to the temple and then like two of the guys jump him and they're going to like make an unfair fight out of it. And so they switch it up some, but it still feels very much like, okay, got to go to the next level, beat the next boss. All right. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just really stuck out to me as I was reading it.
Gotcha.
But in the end, the therapy works and Seth comes. Okay, because even after Seth has abandoned this stone that tells him what to do, right? Or that is the
he's
focus.
Beholden to whoever tells him what to do.
Yeah. Even after that, he joins this order of knights, and their oaths, and we get the idea in this book that their oaths may be kind of corrupted at this point and that they were something else previously, but at least at this point their oaths are about trusting the law or something external to yourself. So I can't be trusted to make the best decisions, so I will follow the law because the law is external to me and is in some way perfect, and so by following that, I don't have to make my own decisions, basically.
Gotcha.
And so Kaladin has to try to help him understand that you are allowed to decide what you want to do with your own life. Like you move from following the orders of a rock to following the law, and that's not really that big a change. So like you're allowed to decide for yourself. And that's where his therapy goes for most of this book is Kaladin wants to help him figure out that he's allowed to have feelings and to want things and to do what he wants and not just follow something else all the time. So in the end of that particular storyline, Seth he at some point or in an earlier book, he was given a new magic sword that talks and wants to destroy evil, and that I've actually brought into our D&D game that we play because it's so much fun. But it can kind of eat you if you use it too much. And he ends up losing an arm at the end of the book. It gets eaten by this magical sword. And Kaladin ends up like sacrificing himself to become one of the heralds, to take the place of one who has died and demi-godhood, where he's going to spend the next who knows how long in this like pocket dimension trying to help the other 9 heralds because they've all lived for 4,500 years and gone kind of crazy each in their own freaky way. And so he's going to try to group therapy that out. And that's where his storyline ends. So in some ways it's a little bit silly, and in that whole line, which is ostensibly is kind of the main line of the book because it's called Wind and Truth, and they are like Kaladin is the Knight of Wind and Seth is the Knight of Truth or something like that. And so theoretically that's the main story here. It wraps up okay, and we definitely get a lot of cool information out of it. But I can see how people aren't thrilled about it, especially when the main character dies at the end or whatever. Although he's not really dead.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a little bit like Gandalf and the Balrog, where we all thought he was dead, and then he comes back as Gandalf the White. I will say, the thought of reading a sort of medieval fantasy novel series where one of the books is basically just therapy sounds not that interesting.
Well, to be fair, that's not the whole book. That's this storyline of the book.
But is there some action?
Oh, I mean, like I said, they have a bunch of boss fights in this section because they have to beat each of the magic guys and take their swords.
All right.
But speaking of action, let's move. I've kind of given my thoughts on this storyline from beginning to end. There's several other storylines happening, and so we'll move to one of those.
Okay.
We've got. All right. To rewind a little bit, I mentioned at the beginning that there's 10 days until the big showdown between the good guys and the dark god that's going to decide the fate of the world. At the end of the previous book, they wrote up a contract, basically, that was like, the battle's going to happen at this time, and after the battle, here's how it goes. So If the good guys win, then the bad guy has to give up some of the land that his troops have already taken, some specific countries, but he gets to keep most of what he's taken, and then there's basically a ceasefire. The bad guy's like, okay, I'll stop my armies from attacking, and we'll be happy with the territory that we've already taken. If the good guys win, that was if the good guys win. If the bad guy wins, then he gets to keep all the territory. He gets the whole planet more or less, and he gets to take over. The leader of the good guy crew, more or less, of the leader of the armies on the good side, his name is Dalinar. He'll have to agree to like give up his soul essentially and work for this evil god. So that's kind of the stakes. Actually, to be fair, if the bad guys win, the borders just freeze. The good guys still get to keep whatever territory they already have. It's just the bad guys don't have to give up some of the countries they've taken. So,
but and really, the one guy's eternally bound to the devil. Where this bad guy,
and he's like a really great general, kind of like a military genius, but also like a force on the battlefield. Like he can just slaughter. When he was a young guy, he just like cut a swath and was like unstoppable. And so this is the Dark God wants to use this planet. Odium is I mentioned it's his name. He wants to use this planet as basically like his training ground to create an army to go out and take over the rest of the galaxy, essentially. And he wants this guy to be like the immortal leader of these troops.
And are his children Thor, Hela, and Loki evil as well?
No, Odium. Odium doesn't have any kids. What does he?
I am Thor, son of Odium.
But okay, so
I abuse myself. I'm sorry.
No,
hey, you've been saying Odium, and all I can think of is Thor, son of Odium.
It never even occurred to me that sounded like Odin. When you first said Thor, Hela, and Loki, I was like, I don't understand the connection, but okay, no, I get it. But no, Odium is a word that means hatred.
Okay.
By the way. So you can think of him like
as
that.
hatred. Okay, yeah.
So
the bad guy from the Fifth Element. Okay, I got you.
Okay, yeah, kind of. But no, to move to an even bigger level, the overall story of the Cosmere that includes Mistborn and Stormlight and several other series is that like way back in the past there was this god. They call that Analsium. So he's just capital G God. He creates everything, whatever. 16, technically at least 17 guys got together and decided we're going to kill God. And they kill him and they rip him apart, and his power is divided into 16 pieces. And each of these guys who helped kill him takes one of the pieces and ascends to become basically a smaller version of God. But each of the pieces is like a different part of his personality. Gotcha. And so they're kind of beholden to the intent of this piece, the personality of this piece. So, for instance, in the Mistborn trilogy, you had Ruin, the part of that old god that wants to destroy, and Preservation, the part that like wants to keep things the same. And those were the two gods who were in conflict in the Mistborn series. So on this planet, we have Odium, so God's hatred. You have honor, God's sense of honor. And you also have cultivation, which is like, I guess, this god's motivation to make things grow or whatever. So
yeah. Okay.
So anyway, that's what Odium is. Odium is like the embodiment of godly hatred. And he wants to he's already killed several other of these shards, of these pieces throughout the galaxy. He wants to take over the rest. So the contract says at the end of this 10 days, we're going to have this fight. And at that time, however the fight goes, people keep the territory they have, except for the stuff specifically called out that would change hands by the agreement. So one of the main through lines of this book is that they realized they kind of made a mistake, because Odium has these 10 days to try to take more territory that he'll get to keep, no matter how the battle goes at the end, if he can take it over before then. And there's a loophole in the treaty that says if Odium can take the capital of a country, he gets the whole country. So
this does feel like a video game.
Yeah. So there are like 3 fronts that are happening throughout the book where there's battles going on where Odium is trying to take the capital of a territory so that he gets to keep it after the end of the 10 days. So one of these is Dalinar, who, like I said, is the leader of the good guys. He's one of these magical knights. He has a son named Adolin. Adolin doesn't have any magical powers. He does have a big ass magic sword. But this is, I told you, like way back when the old knights broke their oaths and they basically put down their weapons. And you remember the weapons that these knights have are like their spren. Their friends who they've made this bond with become these weapons for them. When they broke these oaths and put down their swords, it like killed the spren. Killed, quote. It's more complicated than that. And so, but all of these swords are still cool magic swords that can cut through anything. And so, like, no matter
except
what kind of
for each other.
Yes, except for each other, essentially.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, whoever held these shard blades, these swords, became very powerful.
Gotcha.
So, ever since then, that was like thousands of years ago, people have fought over these swords.
Gotcha.
And Adolin has one of these swords. So that's he doesn't have magical powers, but he has a cool sword, and he's an expert duelist. And so he is leading the defense of one of these cities. And what we see in his storyline is that he's pissed off at his dad, and that's part of it. Is that
I mean, who hasn't been there? Am I right?
Well, he's pissed off at his dad because it turns out his dad murdered his mom. But
all right, that's a different story.
Yeah. But anyway, I'd
be mad at my dad too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, probably. But yeah, so Adolin spends the whole book in the capital city of this country, Azir, and he's trying to help them defend themselves against the attack of the bad guys. And so it's kind of a lot of normal, like what you expect. Like he has to win over the generals who are in charge of this place and show them that he knows what he's doing and what he's talking about, and get them on his side. He has to help train up some troops who are inexperienced because there's just thousands of these bad guys coming that they got to hold them back for 10 days. And it's just a very long, drawn out, like everybody's getting worn down, and just all through these 10 days, we're revisiting him periodically and seeing how they're doing real well. Like for every one of their guys who dies, they're killing like 10 of the enemy, but the enemy just has that many more guys than them. And so it's slowly grinding them down and down and down. And eventually the enemy like takes the city. The enemy has what they call thunderclasts, which they have these they're kind of like Spren, except that they're actually souls of dead void bringers that come back from damnation. But they can go into the ground and create like 100-foot high rock monsters. And so one of these is called Thunderclasts. One of these giant rock monsters like tries to destroy the city. And let me see if I can find a good picture. All right, here they are. They had a good illustration of them in the book, and this made it into the wiki. So there's 3 of these souls that are so messed up that they can become these giant rock monster things. And so here, let's see if I can. And one of them shows up, and he has to try to fight it. And they do end up taking it down and killing it, but he loses like half of his leg in the process. And it's real. It's real. Dark moment for him.
Yeah.
And
that's cool looking though. That creature.
I know, right? They are. Kind of reminds me of, especially the one that looks all skeletal. Kind of reminds me of one of the Titans from the Hercules movie. But although
I never saw that. With the Rock,
the animated Hercules movie.
Oh no!
The Disney one.
Yeah. It's been a while. It's been a while. I don't remember that, but I'll take your word for it.
The ice one, I feel like the Ice Titan looks kind of like this guy. But anyway.
Okay.
So his story is interesting, and it how introspective he can be, and the things that come out of it. Like there's a lot of interesting stuff in his storyline. It's kind of separated from everything else that's going on, and it's also kind of like at some point you're like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's a fight. We're fighting and some more fighting. Okay, yeah, fighting, right, and fighting. And so it starts to drag at some point for me a little bit before, he loses his leg and things get real bad. And they end up turning the tables, and at the last moment, in this particular country, they have this tradition that's like, as the country doesn't fall as long as the emperor is still sitting on his throne. And so that's their own loophole that they found, and they managed to like take the throne room and put the emperor on it right before the 10-day time limit passes. And like the whole hallway outside is filled with these like giant hulking Voidbringer bad guys that that are trying to kill him or whatever. And then the time is up, and they all basically like, oh, all right, well, we'll leave then. So it's
oh, you got us. Time ran out.
I managed to spot pretty early on. I was like, oh, I see where the loopholes they're gonna find and how they're gonna turn this around. So that didn't hurt it for me. I still thought that they did it really well. That that Brandon set up these little things that paid off at the right moment. And so there was lots of cool stuff in there. I like Adolin. I liked his story. I liked we got a lot of development for his character here, which was nice. But that whole storyline does kind of just end up dragging a little bit in the middle for me. But otherwise, I thought that it was pretty good. So that's one of the other stories, and it is almost all action. The only time that it's not action is when they stop to play a card game, which also feels very video gamey. It's like Final Fantasy VIII or something, where it's like, yeah, we're saving the world, but hold on, let's take a break and play this card game real quick because it'll be fun.
Not done in like a calm before the storm time thing. They're like, hold on, we got to pause. There is a Pokemon tournament that we have got to show up to.
No, they do it a little better than that. It's okay. Like according to Adolin, this game really teaches you how to think strategically about the battlefield. This card game is really helpful for that. So he's teaching the emperor of this nation, who's a young boy, how to play this game to help him learn how to be like a military leader, essentially.
Okay.
So it does play into it, but it also seems kind of silly that it's like, we're fighting for our lives. Let's go ahead and play some cards.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay. But so yeah, that storyline's okay. Kind of fun, kind of, but it can drag. So let me see. What other storyline do we have? Let me make sure that I'm touching on all the various things in my quick overview here. So we did Kaladin, we did Adolin. We need to talk about Shalon and Yasna. And okay, so Dalinar, like I said, he's the leader of the Knights Radiant, is what all these knight groups are called.
Okay.
And he's the leader of the different nations who have banded together against Odium and his forces. His niece is technically the queen of Alethkar. But it's currently occupied by the bad guys, so they don't really have a nation. So, but she is like a scholar. She's super smart. One of my favorite characters because I like scholarly characters who use their brains to accomplish things, right? So while this is going on in Azamir, another storyline is that there is another city called Thaylen City, which is the capital of the nation Thaylana, which is one of their closest allies. And she's going to help them defend because Odium is sending like a fleet of ships to attack them and try to take that capital. So Yasna takes some troops with her, and she's going to go and help them. And she manages to figure out that the ships are fake. I mean, the ships are really there, but they're not really full of troops. It's all a misdirect. So this seems like the one that this should be the easy fight to win, because this is the misdirect. He's not really trying to take this. Odium's not really after this, but it quickly turns out that it's a different kind of battle happening here. Odium shows up like in person essentially and has like a debate with Yasna to convince the queen of this Thaylana is the name of the country, to convince her that she should just choose to side with him. And Yasna is like one of the smartest, most renowned people in the world for her scholarship and her ability to speak and write and stuff. One of the interesting things about the world of Roshar is their religion forbids men from learning to read and write. Only women are allowed to do that. So like pretty much all the scholars are women.
Nice.
So
more women in STEM, I say.
All women in STEM.
Yeah, all women in STEM.
Listen,
my mom was a proponent that men should only be should be kept in zoos and only be let out for procreation and recreational purposes.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. I can see that. In here, it's more men do the fighting and women do the quote boring stuff. But yeah. Okay. Um. But so yeah, basically it's a debate, and she's like, "Oh, I got this. This is like this is my jam. Like this is what I do." So eventually, he like uses her own perspectives against her and turns it around, and like she's forced to admit that like, or she's forced to either admit that he's right or to lie, knowing that this queen knows her well enough that she'll catch her in a lie, essentially. And so, yeah, we end up losing this city because of a debate. And Yasna, who's always been this like super self-confident, like the smartest person in the room, always real sure of herself. The book ends with her really like, I lost at, like, the thing that I was best at. Like, I'm not as confident. I'm not as loyal to my standards or my beliefs as I thought I was. Like, he's made her question everything, and I felt like that was just a really fascinating approach to mix it up. It's not all fighting. We're doing something different over here, and it was really interesting for her character because, like I said, she's always been so confident to, at the end of these 5 books, undermine that confidence and make her really start reflecting on some stuff. So I love Yasna, and it was sad to see her lose like that. But I think that overall, it's going to be interesting for her character moving forward. And she's supposed to be one of these perspective characters for one of the second 5 books where we'll get her flashbacks. So that'll be fun.
Gotcha. I bet it'll be good for her character. Put hair on her chest. And to quote Willow, she's a girl. She doesn't want hair on her chest. But yeah, no, I can see how being confident in something you're good at and then losing at how that would be a moment where your character would get to grow as you overcome that failure.
Or you turn into Dark Willow and you just like rip some guy's skin off. So
yeah, but Dark Willow is hot.
Except for the veininess, yeah, you're not wrong.
So I'll be honest, I don't remember the veininess.
Okay, hold on. Now we're gonna look at Dark Willow.
Yeah, you'll have to do that. Listen, you have to understand something. I didn't watch Buffy when it originally aired because I had very negative feelings about Sarah Michelle Gellar because of what she did to Reese Witherspoon and Ryan Phillippe in Cruel Intentions. Nothing I'm about to say is rational. But then these 2 girls I was friends with loved Buffy and they wanted me to watch the show. Oh yeah, she was veiny. All right, yeah, take the veins away. But these 2 girls I was friends with, they were like, you have to watch this show, but you have to play the Buffy drinking game. And I vaguely remember episodes because of that game, because the whole thing was like you drink whenever someone says, I think it was anytime anybody says Slay, Slayer, Slayer, anytime someone says Buffy, anytime Giles takes his glasses off and cleans them. And with just those, you get hammered pretty quickly. I feel like just with Buffy, like people say her name all the time. Or maybe Buffy wasn't it, but Slay, and Slayer were anytime anybody said a version of that, it was good. But like he does that 2 or 3 times an episode.
Oh, I don't think I knew that. I don't think I ever noticed that about Giles. But yeah. Okay, that's
rewatch it sometimes and watch how often he cleans his glasses.
I'm gonna have to now. Although I will say that I also love Dark Willow, and I have the Dark Willow pop figures. So
nice.
Like if I watched Buffy probably after college even. Like they put it up on Netflix to stream, and I was like, you know what? I've never sat down and watched Buffy. Let's watch it. And Buffy, whatever. Xander, he can be fun. Willow is what I was there for.
I got you.
I love her.
Yeah, I got you.
And they're apparently, like Sarah Michelle Gellar saying, they're doing the reboot of Buffy and that she's involved in it. So
that should be exciting. It'll be interesting what they do.
Yes, I will be interested. I'm not gonna say I'm excited yet, but I'll be interested in seeing what they do.
Yeah. All right, but we've digressed.
Okay, so yes, Yasna storyline, very different. Liked it, like where the potential it has for her character. So that's another storyline. We have yet another storyline is the defense of a third place, which is the Shattered Plains. They're defending, and this is where the enemy sent the Odium sends like all of his kind of normal troops, his just like run of the mill guys to fight in Azamir earlier, where Adolin's fighting. He sent like thousands and thousands of them to just like overpower them with people. Odium also has magic dudes who are kind of the opposite number to the Knights Radiant. They have crazy ass powers, right?
Okay.
So he sends almost all of them to this location, to the Shattered Plains, to take this area. And so there's only like a couple thousand of these guys, but they're all crazy magic guys. So where Kaladin used to be the leader of the Windrunners. There were a lot of Windrunners, and it was like basically their best military unit because they could fly, they have magic swords and spears and stuff. And now that he's retired from that because he doesn't want to fight anymore, he's going to do therapy instead. We're left with Sigzil being in charge, and Sigzil is like he's kind of more like a clerk by nature, and he likes like engineering and stuff. He's not thrilled with being in charge of the defense of this place and all of these soldiers, but he comes up with some really like intricate and interesting plans, because basically it's like if they want to win, they're gonna have to take like this one section, but we're gonna defend 4 different areas so that we can lure them into wasting their troops trying to take these unimportant areas, and they'll waste troops, they'll waste time. And maybe we can hold out long enough to keep this one area safe. So that one is also a lot of fighting, but it's like different, kind of more interesting fighting. And we don't even see, except for like the big, like there's one of those giant rock guys is there, this Thunderclast. We see almost none of that. They beat it and we're told about it, but it's not a big deal. Because we've got all these magic using guys here defending the place, and they're used to this shit by now. So it's less about the nitty gritty of the fight than Adolin's storyline, and it's more about like there's some introspection stuff here, but it's about like trying to outthink the enemy instead of just fight.
Got you.
And so he's trying to mix it up a little bit. He's trying to make each of these a little bit different, so it doesn't get monotonous.
Yeah. Makes sense.
It works ish, and they end up losing this one also, but they come up with a plan to lose it in a certain way where instead of Odium and the bad guys getting it, like basically a third party takes over this area. They trick them into letting these guys in, and so they're like, well, we don't get to keep this area, but we'll have like allies here instead of enemies. So that's better than the alternative. So I liked a lot of details about that because they're about the way I also spotted this twist coming pretty well in advance, but it was so clever that I liked the way they did it, and I was proud of myself for spotting it, so it worked out.
Nice.
But Sigzil's story himself is very tragic because he has one of these honor spren also. Just all the Windrunners have their own little honor spren, and mostly the sprens seem to pair up with people as like if you're a guy who is straight, your spren ends up being a female. If you are a guy who's gay, your spren ends up being a guy. If you're a woman who's straight, your spren ends up being a guy. So I don't know that that's like 100%, but that seems to be generally how it ends up going.
Gotcha.
And so he has this little honor spren, this just like the picture I sent you, a little blue translucent woman who she also like she's such a perfect match for him. This is the first time we'd met her in this book. We knew that he had one, but we didn't he wasn't like a main perspective character before, so we weren't inside his head a lot.
Gotcha.
So I loved her when we met her because she loves numbers. She's like running the numbers on the battlefield. There's these guys who like they have these swords, like I told you, they can generally cut through anything. But this new breed of magic bad guy shows up who, when they jab him with the magic spear, it only goes in a little ways. He's got like layers and layers of defense that eventually stop it. And he like gets going quick and hits him again, and it goes in a little bit further. And based on those 2 data points, she calculates exactly how far he'll have to start from and how fast he'll have to get going to actually make the spear go far enough. And he does that, and it goes like all the way through the guy's head. And it's just, I'm just like a statistics nerd or whatever, because I loved it. I loved it.
I get it.
So
I'm familiar with Leroy Jenkins. 3.33, repeating, of course.
Repeating, yes. Oh, Leroy Jenkins. That's Poet's Jam, y'all. If you just Google Leroy Jenkins if you have no idea what we're talking about.
Let's do this.
Leroy. Okay, no, sorry.
Oh man.
So in the past, the Spren, like, so the knights can die and the Spren it hurts them, but they can kind of find another guy and just start over again. The Spren have never been vulnerable really before, unless, I guess, like I said, the Broken Oath killed them in the past, but not like vulnerable to the enemy, essentially.
Yeah.
Because they're not even like really here. They're like translucent. They can pass through stuff. Most of them anyway.
Gotcha.
So at the end of the last book, the bad guys came up with a way to kill the Spren. And so
that's not good.
It's not great. And so in this book, like, Sigil gets incapacitated, and Moash, you know, the guy who used to be our friend but who we now hate and is a huge asshole, he is about to kill the Spren, and Sigil's like, no, I can't. And so he like just goes, I break my oaths, and he and it severs their bond, and it hurts her badly, but it makes it so that he can't kill her. Yeah, it frees her so that she can escape and not get killed. So
that's dope. I like that.
It's not a thing that I expected to happen, but it's the kind of idea that he would come up with. And in the end, like, at the very end of the book, he like leaves the planet because he's just like, I fucked everything up. I was in charge. Everything went to hell. And like, he tries to communicate with this Spren, and she's like, hey, look, I understand why you did what you did, but like, what you did hurt me really deeply, even though it saved my life, and I don't want to talk to you. And so he's just like so miserable, he leaves the planet at the end with this group of people who's like going to a different planet.
All right. So because in my mind this whole time it's been medieval fantasy.
Right.
How does this medieval fantasy people leave the planet?
Okay, so that's actually the craziest shit of all. Okay. So there's this group called the Iriali. It's a nation. They live in the nation of Erie on this planet. And they have like golden hair, not like blonde hair, but like shiny golden hair.
Okay.
And in their religion, in their religion, God existed, and but God could only have one perspective. He's called the One in their religion. The One only had their own perspective as the One, and they wanted to learn other perspectives. So the One split themselves into pieces and became everybody, all of the Erie, so that they're all living these different lives, and the One gets to experience all of these, you know, from a street urchin to a king or whatever. And as part of that, in their religion, like, this world is like the fourth world or something. And so in their stories, like, once they've learned everything, experienced everything there is to experience here, they will progress to the fifth world. And it's always in the first four books. It doesn't get talked about much, honestly, but it's always just like, oh, you know, that's just some crazy religious whatever, right? So in one of the interludes in this book, we're in this country, which is kind of separated from the fighting that's been going on in the rest of the world. They're not super involved in it. And just like this giant Spren type creature is just like basically pops up and is like, okay, y'all, it's time to go. And opens up all of these portals around the country, and all of the people, because their religion says this is someday going to happen, they have like go bags packed. Like, they're always ready to pick up and leave at a moment's notice. Shit. And so they're all just like, oh, okay. He says it's time. The magic portal's open. Let's go. And this whole nation picks up and goes into these magic portals that have opened up everywhere. And they start heading through to it's a long trek on the other side to get to a different world, but they have a big convoy basically that's going. And so he finds a way to like hook up with these guys, and they're like, yeah, you can hang out with us. We're heading over to this other world.
Interesting.
And it's funny because we've actually, in one of the Mistborn books that is already written that takes place after this, there were like rumors about these people with golden hair who had popped up on an island out somewhere.
Oh.
And so people
now
when
you're
they
finding out.
Yes, and now you find out how they got there. Exactly.
Interesting.
So it's just like when it happens, it just seems so fucking nuts. Like, wait, what? But it and then it fits. Like you're like, oh, Brandon's like hinted about this shit and basically flat out told us that like their religion says this is what's going to happen. We just never believed it before. Okay. But yeah, some crazy ass shit. And he makes his way off with them. And actually, he is the main character in a book that came out like last year that takes place way in the future. But for most of that book, you didn't know it was him until the end, or not even, maybe like 2/3 of the way through. And you're like, wait a second, is this that guy from this other book? And we didn't know how this happened, that he's on other planets way in the future.
And
but you knew something bad was coming, and now we know what happened. So,
oof.
Yeah, it was crazy. So that's another whole storyline in this book, and it's got its ups and downs. I think it went pretty well on the whole.
Mm-hmm.
But that leaves basically one storyline that I haven't touched on, and it's because it's the most just insane, and it's also the one that probably people have the most complaints about.
Okay.
So Dalinar,
I can see why this is like 1,400 pages.
Right? Yeah. So yeah, Dalinar, who's in charge of them, he's
old one leg.
Yeah, no, that's his son Adolin is the one.
Oh, Adolin loses a leg?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so Dalinar, his dad, who murdered Adolin's mom, kind of.
Oh yeah, fuck that guy.
Now, kind of accidentally on purpose. Look. Okay.
Suspicious.
I gotta explain this now.
Fry suspicious eyes right now.
So look, he had gone a long time ago when they were conquering
far away.
Yeah, when they were conquering this kingdom, they went to this city and they took over this city, right? And this is when he was young. He fucking killing everybody in his way. A force on the battlefield. He finds like the king hiding in this city, hiding in this secret room, and he makes his way in there, kills the guy, takes his magic sword because this guy had one of those big ass magic swords and Dalinar didn't at this point, so he gets one for himself. But he lets the guy's son survive. He's like, I'm not gonna kill a kid. What the fuck? Years later, Dalinar's brother is the king of this whole country that they've united through warfare, including that one city. Old dude who he killed and took his sword, his son is now grown up, and he is leading this city in a revolt against the king. And so Dalinar is sent to take care of that shit. He gets there and he's like, look, he's got a wife now, he's got kids. He doesn't want to be that guy that he was. He's like, look, I want to work this out, okay? I don't want to have to kill you guys. Let's figure out how we can work this out. And so the kid who's now in charge of the city tricks him and gets him to chase some supposed conspirators out into the woods with his like closest soldiers, like his best and brightest soldiers that work right for him. They go out into the woods, and then there's an ambush, and they drop a bunch of rocks and kill all his guys and almost kill Dalinar. And so Dalinar at this point is fucking seeing red, and he's like, nah, fuck this. He makes his way back. He's like covered, blood dripping everywhere, dragging his sword behind him. He can barely like think. And he's just like, okay, I gave him a chance, and this is how they fucking do me. We're going to kill him. And so he goes and he tells his men, he's like, burn this fucking city to the ground. And he finds that secret passage again where the king had his hidey hole. And he's like, that fucking dude's in there. And he lights some barrels of oil on fire and kicks them down in there. He's like, yeah, this will fucking teach him. Turns out while he's gone, or actually right after he gets back, his wife has heard him talking about like, kill them all. We're going to burn this whole place. And she is this really nice woman, doesn't want that to happen. She goes secretly to negotiate with the kid who's in charge of the city now. And he captures her and puts her in jail. Only it turns out their jail is where the king's hidey hole was back in the day. So when Dalinar kicks those barrels of oil to like kill the king in his hidey hole. That was actually his wife down there.
Oof.
And he burns her to death. So it was pretty fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds horrible.
And so, yeah, and it comes out at the end of like book 3 or something. And so his son has grown up his whole life idolizing his dad. And now he finds out that he killed his mom. And so he's pretty pissed off about that. But anyway.
I mean, to be fair, I take back my earlier statement. I mean, he didn't know his wife was down there.
Right, exactly.
And listen, I'm just gonna say to those listening at home, communication is the most important thing in a relationship. And if you communicate, most likely your partner will not kick flaming oil barrels down a hallway in which you've been jailed, leading to your death.
Talk this shit out. I agree. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is a public service announcement from the Sanderlanche podcast.
Yes.
But so yes, the final storyline in this book is about Dalinar. He's going to fight. It's going to be a contest of champions at the end of the 10 days. Odium's going to pick a champion. Dalinar is going to pick a champion. Dalinar's going to pick himself because he's the kind of guy who feels like he needs to do everything himself.
Yeah.
And so, and he's also one of these knights. He's got some magic powers, but his magic powers are like the craziest magic powers. He can manipulate the bonds between stuff, and that can mean anything from like he found like a statue that was broken and he could like seal it back together by bonding the pieces together, all the way to like the like relationship bonds between two people, like just any kind of bond. It can be metaphorical or real, but he can manipulate that.
All I can think about is Channing Tatum in 21 Jump Street talking about covalent bonds.
And so he doesn't, his power is so like vast and like weird that he doesn't know how to use it well. And he's like, before I get in this fight, I need to know how to use my powers the best way I can. But also, they really have very little understanding of how all of this started, because it started thousands and thousands of years ago, and Odium's been around all this time. Yeah. And Honor was around. Odium killed Honor at some point in the intervening time. And so they know that Honor's power is out there somewhere, and somebody gives Cultivation, the other god who's hanging around, gives him the idea that if he can find Honor's power and like take it up, then he'll be on even terms with Odium, and he might actually stand a chance of winning this. But also, even if he can't do that, like just learning about what happened in the past, how all of this came to be, will help him.
Yeah.
And so he figures a way, with the help of a guy not from this planet and some other stuff, to like go into what they call the spiritual realm. There's 3 realms. There's the physical realm where everybody hangs out. Mm-hmm. The cognitive realm is like the realm of thought. And that's actually where they go when they're traveling between worlds. You can do that in the cognitive realm. You can walk from one planet to another. But
very Ramona Flowers.
It is kind of, yeah, like the hyperspace shortcut. It is a lot like that now that you say that. Cognitive realm is also where the Spren live, but most of the time. Mm-hmm. So the third one is the spiritual realm, and that's like it's like time and space don't work the same way there. They're like kind of all at once sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so he finds out that if he goes into the
TVA,
world,
if you will.
Well, okay, yeah, actually. But he finds out if he goes there, he can like and manipulates it the right way. He can see what happened in the past and figure out, how did all this start? What happened to Honor? How did he get destroyed? Where is his power now? Maybe I can get that. All that stuff. So they try an experiment where they're like, okay, we'll try a quick jump to see this one specific thing. And if that works, him and his wife are going to do this. And if that works, we'll go further. And then, of course, the experiment goes horribly wrong and they get trapped in there. But they're like, well, let's keep going. Let's try to find as long as we're here, let's try to find the information we're after. Along with him and his wife, who intend to go in there, we've got other main characters who are in there. There's like bad guys who followed them in there, who followed Dalinar and his wife in there. And there's other good guys who followed the bad guys who are following them. And then there's Dalinar's, I guess technically you call him grandnephew. Like, so Dalinar's brother was Gavilar. Gavilar was the king. Gavilar is the one who gets killed by Seth at the very beginning of the whole series, when Seth wore white on the day he was to kill a king. That's Gavilar.
Yeah, that's the
Gavilar
king. Okay.
dies. Gavilar's son Elokar becomes king. He was never all that great a king, but he's Dalinar's nephew. Dalinar's doing everything he can to support his young nephew, the king. Elokar, the young king, goes to rescue his like 5-year-old son and gets killed by Moash. And he's gone. And so now Dalinar and his wife, who used to be his brother's wife, so Elokar's mom.
All right, so did he remarried? Because I'm like, isn't his wife
Yes,
crispy?
right. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that.
Okay,
He.
I thought for a second he's just walking around with Aunt Beru.
So no, yeah, he married the old king's wife, his brother's wife, way later on because he was always secretly in love with her or whatever, right? So
this guy is the worst. I'm just telling. This guy is the worst.
Well,
I'm back to hating this guy.
It was actually he was very much against it. He was like, no, it's not proper, and she basically had to seduce him into it, even though he's always been in love with her. She had to like really just come on to him to get him to admit it. And anyway, so they're basically raising this kid as their grandson now that his dad is dead, and they've rescued him from the kid's mom was a fucking psycho. She's dead also now. But so the grandson gets caught up in the explosion disaster that gets them stuck in there. So he ends up stuck in there with them. Okay. So, and the grandson is named Gavinor. So kind of named after his grandfather.
Can we name one of these kids Tiffany just so? Oof.
So anyway, this whole and this is a big section of the book. We're finding out the thousands of years of history of what happened, where the heralds came from, these 10 demigods, how they got their powers, where Honor and Odium, how they came to be here, how their interactions in the past have led to this. That's a lot of the book is just giving us this history so that Dalinar knows it so that he can use this going forward. And a lot of the complaints I've seen is that it's a lot of telling. It's a lot of us watching history happen. And they're like, well, you could have just written a history book. It is a lot of pages of that. Me personally, the history is one of the things I was most excited about. After 4 over 1,000-page books, where all of this past is a mystery, I was like, hell yeah, give me in an IV all of this historical context. I love it, but I can see where people have issues with it.
I mean, I guess I can see both sides of that coin. I mean, I think to me, I'd probably fall on your side where learning it in this way via the character looking back at history versus where you just have this moment where it's like, all right, editor's note, see this book for the entire history of the universe. And you're just like, all right.
Yes. You get to see them react, and you get to see how he's going to use this information to help the cause going forward. I like it, but I can see why some people don't. So that's a lot of that whole storyline is they're in the spiritual realm. They're watching this history unfold. In the background, there's these other things because they end up playing all of these historical events out in scenes, and they become people in the scenes. That's how they experience them.
Okay.
And so they don't realize that any of these other people are here. And so in the background, you've got the bad guys are trying to hide out as characters in these scenes, and the other good guys are trying to are also in these scenes as other characters, and they're trying to figure out who the bad guys are and trying to stop them without disturbing the main stuff that's going on, because Dalinar needs to get all this information. So it gets a little bit wacky at times, but it's kind of fun. And then in the end, his wife Navani manages to escape the spiritual realm with grandson Gavinor, and gets out a little bit before he does. He has a few more of these experiences and sees a little more history before he gets out also. And then the moment of the big challenge comes. And one of the things that we've learned, right, is that honor and cultivation and odium all ended up on this planet, and they kind of made a deal to leave each other alone and do their own stuff and fight through proxies. And that's how this thousands of years of war is happening. because if these powers actually fight each other directly, it would rip the planet apart. And honor and cultivation don't want that. Odium really doesn't give a shit.
Right.
But a side effect of that is Odium has become trapped here. And all he wants is to destroy the other shards, all of the other 15 pieces. He's already destroyed like 3 or 4 of them at this point. So there's like 11 pieces left or whatever. All the other pieces of God he wants to destroy so that he's the most powerful one. And then he can take over the universe. So, but he's stuck here. And
wait, is Odium Harry Potter?
What? Harry Potter doesn't want to take over the universe?
No, he's trying to destroy the Horcrux.
Oh, he is. Yeah, maybe a little bit. But
is Alan Rickman in this book?
Dude, Alan Rickman would make a great Odium. Actually, there's some guest casting there. He's dead now, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
But so
I mean, rest in peace, respectfully.
Oh, absolutely.
We love Alan Rickman.
Fucking Die Hard is. Yeah. Anyway, don't get me started.
It's my favorite Christmas movie.
It is my favorite Christmas movie. 100% honest. I love Alan Rickman. But one of the ongoing themes throughout the other books has been Odium is stuck here, and you've got all of these other pieces of God who, if they ganged up, could easily take him out.
Uh-huh.
But they're all content. They're like, what? He's stuck there. Let them deal with him. We don't give a shit.
That sounds about right.
And so that's been going on this whole time in the background. Is like you've got this one guy who's like goes to other planets and stuff. We don't see that, but we know he has a history there, and he's trying to communicate with them. He's like, we need your help to stop this. If he gets loose, it's bad for everybody. And they're like, whatever. He's stuck. It's fine. So we get to the big fight. The culmination at the end of day 10 comes. Dalinar has left the spiritual realm. Odium shows up. It's time for this fight. And Odium's like, oh, here's my champion. And so it turns out that he tricked Navani, Dalinar's wife, when she left the spiritual realm. He made like a fake little 5-year-old that he sent with her with his magical god powers. Uh-huh. And he kept the real kid in the spiritual realm. And because time works so differently there, he raised him to an adult in the spiritual realm to hate like his grandfather and everything. And so he's like, okay, here's my champion. So Dalinar, either you kill your grandson who you love, or you can let him kill you and I win. Either way, things go good for me.
Well, sorry, grandson. I hate to break it to you.
And obviously Dalinar does not like either of these options. And he's not going to kill his grandson. He doesn't want to die either, and he definitely doesn't want his side to lose the war. So, because a lot of people are counting on him. And in the end, he manages to get a hold of Honor's power, which is what he set out to do. So he becomes like a god, essentially. Mm-hmm. But a god still bound by the same rules that the gods are bound by. Like, the power of Honor had this agreement with Odium that they would not fight directly. And even though the guy who used to hold that power is dead, the power is still bound by that.
Okay.
And the power of Honor is all about oaths. Like, Honor's it likes people to make oaths, and it wants them to keep their oaths. That's its thing. And so that's how the original guy who held that power ended up weak enough to get killed, is he broke this oath, and the power like separated from him essentially, and let him, and so he ended up dead. So Dalinar's like, I can't, even with the power of a god, there's no way for him to win this, for him to come out on top that doesn't just ruin everything and let Odium free. And what he ends up doing is the same thing that screwed over the original Honor. He's like, no, I break my oath, and the power leaves him. And then the guy holding the power of Odium is like, hey, I've maintained all of my promises. I always keep my shit. You should come to me, power of Honor. And so he gets double god powers. So the bad guy becomes even more powerful.
Dalinar's the worst.
And so like Honor and Odium combine into a new shard that's twice as powerful called Retribution. And he's also free to do whatever he wants. But the thing is, Odium's plan was to kind of stay on the down low and train his armies on this planet until they were ready to like take over the galaxy or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because none of the other shards gave a shit about him. They're like, yeah, let him stay there as long as he's not bothering us. Now, though, like Dalinar recognized the only way he could win was by losing, but putting Odium in a position, or now Retribution, where all the other gods now realize that guy is twice as powerful as any of us, and he wants to kill us all, and he's free now. We need to do something about this, or we're screwed. So he wins by setting Odium up to lose to all the other ones. And even though in the end, like, as Odium gets all his power and becomes Retribution, there's this huge storm, and Dalinar, like, jumps on his grandson and covers him with his own body and dies protecting him. And the whole planet is now taken over by this evil god, and everything is bad. But on the grander scale, he's now set it up that Odium is in big trouble. And that's like how the book ends, essentially. There's more details than that, but
Yeah.
That's the end of it. And so people are upset about that. They're like, what the fuck? How are you ending by, like, the bad guy not only wins, but becomes twice as powerful as anything else in existence? Like, what the hell? But as Joe put it in an episode when he theorized that the book could end badly, he's like, sometimes you got these empire endings, right?
Yeah. I mean, Infinity War ends with Thanos winning and half of our fucking team being obliterated.
Exactly.
It's the halfway point. You can't kill Odium halfway through the book series when there's still 5 books to go. What are you talking about?
Exactly. See, thank you. See,
and I just feel like readers, you be prepared. It's probably going to get worse before it gets better. He's probably going to collect a couple more shards before somebody gets their shit together to take him down.
Yeah. And so, it ends. He's super powerful. Cultivation does a runner. She's like, oh, fuck this, I'm out. And so he has the whole planet. Also, the planet ends up in like a time bubble where time is moving more slowly here than outside. So
hold on. Data.
Yeah.
Is it the time warp again?
Again. Yeah.
I'm sorry. The Rocky Horror Picture Show just came right out of me.
Oh my gosh!
Listen, I've been up since 3:30 my time. I am a little punchy.
Yep, I've kept Poet up. This went longer than I thought it was going to, but we've pretty much reached the end of it.
I mean, to be fair, it's 1,400 pages. We had a lot to go through.
Yeah, it's true.
Not to mention the previous 1,000 years of history that was in the middle of it.
Yeah. So yes, those are my general thoughts, and actually I end up getting more specific than I thought I would.
Yeah.
If you want more specifics, feel free to check out our Patreon. But thank you, Poet, for being here to keep us grounded.
It's been a pleasure, as always.
And hopefully the whole crew will be back next week for a normal episode where you guys can listen to me blabber slightly less. Not much less, because fuck. You would think, and y'all, and Poet probably gets it by now, you would think that I just love the sound of my own voice from how much I talk on these things, but I really don't. I hate it. I hate being the one that talks, but I want the show to happen, so it's got to be done.
Yep.
So email us if you want. The address is thesanderlanche@gmail.com. Find us on Instagram and Blue Sky and Patreon, which I've already talked about. You can sign up there and check out some more of me blabbering senselessly. Next time, we are supposed to be reading 4 chapters, assuming everything goes well, and that will be... Let me see what we're going to read next time. I have my list here. One moment. 2 chapters. Okay, we're reading chapters 76, 77, 78, and 79 of Words of Radiance next time. So we're approaching the end of that book. On the main podcast, we're on book 2 of the Stormlight Archive and not book 5 like we've been talking about today. But there you go. So come back for that next time. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Poet. Do you want to advertise anything before we sign off?
I'm one half of the Poet and Billy podcast, We're gonna record our Oscar episode this Sunday, so feel free to check us out. We talk about nonsense, nerdy stuff. Usually Billy makes fun of me for my opinions just to rile me up.
And at some point, I'll watch Dune and talk about it with them.
Yeah, and then we'll have Data on to talk about Dune 1 and 2. And he'll let you guys know when that happens.
Oh, 100%. So check that out, you guys. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Paul, for being here.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
And wuzzing to the time of next. Colo, Kies Fasher. Crabs ahoy!
Got my purple wubs, man.